So let me start by saying that this may be a short video because I'm not sure how long my voice will last. But in the Hebrew Bible, the prophets of the Hebrew Bible regularly levied criticism against the people for the way that they practiced their religion and the way they understood God. One of the ways that they did that was to almost mock those who turned pieces of wood or stone into gods. I remember there's a place in Isaiah, I think it's chapter 44, where Isaiah says, how can you use a half of a piece of wood to make your dinner and then the other half of a piece of wood, carve it into the form of some beast of the field and say to it, well, you are my God, I worship you. There's the same piece of wood that cooks your dinner and that you worship as a God. It kind of points out the silliness of that behavior. And I bring that up because there are other places in the prophetic work where they levy similar criticisms, and one of the big criticisms is that any God that you need to protect from others can't really be a God. And so you build these idols and you place them on your mantle, and then you have to hide them when somebody comes in to pillage or whatever, because you don't want your God to be stolen. And the prophets kind of say, what kind of a God can be stolen or defeated so easily? And I raise that because there's a quote from Barbara Brown Taylor where she says this: as a general rule, I would say that human beings never behave more badly toward one another than when they believe they are protecting God. That sometimes we as humans can be awful to each other. That's the ugly truth. But she notes that when we are worst with each other or towards each other, it's when we bring God into the mix. When we bring God in and we say, no, we must defend God. And so now all of a sudden we're in the same boat as those who are being criticized by the prophets. Why do we feel as though our God needs to be defended? Why do we feel as though God is not capable of dealing with people's anger or their confusion or their frustration or even their scorn? Why do we feel as though God somehow needs us to defend God? I remember having a conversation I didn't read this, I had the conversation with someone, I think it was right around the time I was in seminary, and this person, I don't remember if it was a professor or a fellow student, said to me, if I am ever in a position where somebody is railing against God, I feel like my responsibility is to side not with God, but with the person who is hurt. And that's always stuck with me because I think there are a lot of ways that people feel let down by God. But if God really needs us to defend God, is God really a God? Any God that we have to defend can't be anything more than an idol. Why do we feel the need to defend God? Maybe what we ought to do is, like Job's friends, sit down on the pile of ashes with them, grieve with them, mourn with them, and let God take care of defending God. We don't need to defend God. It is not my responsibility to prove God to anyone. Such an idea is ridiculous. And the truth is, if God really needs somebody as feeble-minded as me to defend God, then maybe that's not the God that I should be worshiping. The God that I worship doesn't need me to defend God. The God that I worship asks me instead to side with those who are hurting, and maybe even those who hold their pain against God and hold a grudge against God. That's what it means. That's what it means for me to love my neighbor.